Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime show. You know, huge spectacle,
Absolutely.
amazing performances all around, but
Yeah.
there's been some unexpected fallout, and it's actually not directly about Kendrick at all. It's about one of his guests.
Really?
Yeah, and a pretty big name guest at that, Serena Williams.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so while the whole show got tons of praise, there was a brief appearance by Serena during one of the songs that's stirring up some serious debate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even drawn the attention of the FCC.
Huh. That's interesting. Serena Williams. Yeah, so she's obviously a massive figure in sports.
Right.
And to see her get caught up in controversy after a Super Bowl performance, well, that's not something you see every day.
Right. And it's not like she was, front and center the whole time.
Yeah,
It was just this quick cameo.
Yeah.
But it's those few seconds on stage that have really ignited things.
So what exactly happened? I mean, what did she do that sparked this whole thing?
Well, okay, so during Kendrick's performance of Not Like Us, Serena pops up on stage, and she does this dance move.
Uh-huh.
And that dance move is what's causing all the fuss.
Okay, what was the dance move?
It's called the Crip Walk.
The Crip Walk.
Yeah. And while it's made its way into mainstream culture over the years, it's got these deep ties to gang culture, specifically West Coast gang culture.
Ah, I see. So that's where the controversy comes in.
Yeah, I mean, picture it. You've got the Super Bowl,
Right.
the biggest stage in America, millions of people watching.
Right.
And then Serena Williams performs a dance that's associated with gangs.
Yeah, that's definitely going to raise some eyebrows.
Right, so for a lot of viewers, it just didn't sit right.
Mm-hmm.
So before we go any further, let's maybe break down the Crip Walk itself. For those who might not be familiar with the specifics, why does it carry these associations? What's the history behind it?
So the Crip Walk, or sometimes it's called the Sea Walk, it started way back in the early 80s.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, in Compton, California.
Oh, yeah.
And it was very much linked to the Crips gang. You know, the footwork is pretty intricate.
Yeah.
It was originally a way for gang members to identify each other.
Really?
Yeah, and even to communicate.
Wow.
So, it was like their own secret language.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so while it's definitely spread beyond that, especially within hip-hop culture, those early connections to gangs are still a big part of its meaning for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that context is really important, especially when you consider the scale of the Super Bowl.
Right.
We're talking a record-breaking 133.5 million viewers for this halftime show.
Wow, that's a lot of eyeballs.
Yeah. So when Serena performs this dance on that kind of platform, it's bound to land differently for some people, right?
Definitely. I mean, you're putting something with a very specific and potentially controversial meaning in front of a massive and diverse audience.
Right.
So naturally, there are going to be different reactions.
And the FCC actually received 125 complaints specifically about Serena's Crip Walk.
125.
Yeah, and the main accusation is that she was promoting gang affiliation.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, yeah, to that huge audience we were just talking about.
Yeah, I can see how some people might interpret it that way.
Right. And the thing is, this isn't even the first time Serena has faced criticism for doing the Crip Walk.
Oh, really?
Yeah, after she won gold at the 2012 London Olympics, she celebrated by doing the Crip Walk. And it sparked a similar controversy back then, too.
Interesting. So it's not like this is completely new territory for her.
Not at all.
No.
Now, Serena hasn't directly responded to these latest FCC complaints.
Okay.
But she did talk about her participation in the halftime show in an interview with Vogue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because she framed it as a really meaningful experience. For her, it was about celebrating Black culture and creativity. She called it a once-in-a-lifetime moment and said she felt really honored to be a part of it.
So it sounds like her intention was more about paying tribute to Black culture than anything else.
Exactly. And that's where things get really complex.
Right.
You have these accusations of promoting gang affiliation.
Right.
But then you have Serena's own perspective about celebrating culture. How do you make sense of those two very different interpretations?
Well, I think that's where you get into the nuanced nature of cultural symbols, right? Like the Crip Walk, it doesn't have just one fixed meaning.
Right.
It has these very specific origins, but the way people use it and the way it's interpreted,
Yeah.
that has evolved over time.
Uh-huh.
It's spread across different subcultures.
Absolutely.
And so when you bring something like that to a global stage like the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
all those different layers of meaning, they kind of collide.
All right.
And you've got millions of people watching with their own individual experiences and backgrounds.
Totally.
You know, some people might be really familiar with hip-hop culture. They might understand the dance's history.
Yeah.
Others might not. And so everyone's going to filter it through their own lens and come away with a different perspective.
It's like a huge cultural Rorschach test almost.
Exactly.
And it really highlights how public performances, especially ones with big names involved, they become these lightning rods for much bigger conversations.
Yeah, it's not just about the entertainment anymore.
Right.
It's about all these other things that get tied in: politics, race, identity.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. When someone as prominent as Serena Williams makes any kind of statement or gesture on a platform as big as the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
it's going to get analyzed from every angle.
Absolutely.
People are going to dissect it.
Right.
They're going to debate it.
Yeah,
And that's just the reality for public figures at that level.
definitely. It comes with the territory.
And while 125 complaints might seem small compared to the millions who watched,
Yeah.
the fact that they were filed at all
Right.
shows that this moment really hit a nerve for some people.
It's a reminder that even a small number of complaints can highlight real sensitivities and different interpretations within a large audience.
Exactly. It speaks to how powerful cultural symbols can be
Yeah.
and how varied the reactions to them can be.
And like you said, this isn't the first time Serena's been at the center of this kind of debate.
Right.
It almost seems like it comes with the territory of being such a prominent figure.
Absolutely.
You know, her influence extends far beyond tennis.
Totally.
And with that comes a certain level of, I guess you could say, cultural responsibility.
Yeah.
Or at least an awareness that her actions are going to be interpreted and discussed within a larger cultural context.
And sometimes that leads to controversy.
Right, exactly.
Now, to throw another layer into this whole thing, we have to consider the song itself.
Oh, yeah. Not like us.
Yeah, it wasn't just any random track. It was widely seen as a diss track aimed at Drake.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And, you know, Drake and Serena have a bit of a past.
Yeah.
So do you think that context, the fact that the song was potentially so provocative, plays any role in how Serena's appearance and the whole dance thing was received?
I think it definitely adds another layer to the situation. I mean, the song itself is already kind of setting a tone of rivalry and dissension.
Right.
And then you bring Serena in that mix. It just adds another element of potential meaning and interpretation to everything.
Right. It's like every little detail suddenly becomes more charged.
Exactly. And it all contributes to this really complex and multi-layered meaning that surrounds the performance.
It's fascinating. Yeah. So to recap, we have Serena Williams during a Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl halftime show
Right.
performing a song that's potentially a diss track. And she does a dance with this complex and controversial history.
Yeah.
And it leads to accusations of promoting gang affiliation,
All right.
despite her own explanation that it was about celebrating Black culture.
It's a real collision of factors.
Right. Absolutely. And it just goes to show how loaded these cultural symbols can be
Yeah.
and how those interpretations can clash in a really public way.
Absolutely.
And it makes you think about how much the context of a performance
Right.
can shape the way it's received.
For sure.
It's like, how do these symbols and gestures evolve over time? And why do they spark such different reactions in different people,
Right.
especially on these huge global stages?
It's a really interesting question.
It is. And I think it points to this really interesting intersection
Yeah.
between sports and entertainment and our constantly changing cultural landscape. And it highlights the role that figures like Serena Williams
Yeah.
play in all of that.
Absolutely.
It's definitely something to think about.
For sure.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but we'll be back soon with another look at some fascinating and timely content.
Sounds good.
Until then, keep those questions coming and keep the conversation going.
See ya.
All right, bye.